8 years of the administrator of record having 8 years of service, but it doesn't say 8 years of service as the administrator. Is there going to be clarification? Do you have to have 8 years of experience as an administrator or 8 years of experience in the field?
You know, again, we didn't, this is it. What you see right here, we didn't go deeper than that. But what we're looking for is 8 years of experience in EMS, so that they understand what they're looking at.
Okay.
And I think we're really trying to address that issue of that person saying, what does BLS stand for?
Okay. That helps more.
Anything else?
Any other questions on that?
This section?
Okay. Why don't you take it down for me?
Just one other thought.
Sure.
The thought about may not be employed or otherwise compensated by another private for-profit emergency medical service provider. I know the intent is you don't want somebody doing the same job at two places, being an administrative record here and there. It might need cleaned up a little bit because we're in the land of side jobs down here. And people that work for a large service today will be the administrative record at a small service tomorrow, a 911 provider. And if you just look at it as written, it makes it look like they can't be a paramedic on their main job anymore.
But I think it's under the administrator of record, so we would go back to that,
Okay.
to that qualifier. It's only for the administrator of records. And I think what we're trying to get to, and I'm sure that's what the legislators were talking about, and I've seen this where you and I are competing, we hire the same guy, and he likes me better than you, so he puts you out of business so I get stronger.
Right.
So we want to prevent that from happening.
The other piece that was put in there to prevent was, and then we got all the for-profit and stuff attached to it, but it was put in there to prevent the people who are bookshelving provider licenses. So when they get in trouble, they shut one off and they turn another one on. And it's the same AOR across 3 or 4 provider licenses. That was the other thing that we were hoping to prevent with that. Now they're going to have 3 or 4 different names that meet these qualifications. So.
And hopefully, from the numbers I've seen, we probably peaked the bubble and we're going down now. So I think we may have addressed some of those issues before. I think this will make it even better and prevent it. And hopefully, it's just not going to move it someplace else. But at least it'll be outside of Texas. So let me see. So here we're still the administrative records. We're done all of that. There's your employment of a medical director, an employed person. We've already talked about that. Just keep on going till you see yellow. Okay. So here's where we're going to start getting into, this is the applicant, this is the person putting in the application to become a new service in Texas. And you'll see the yellow is the language right from the legislation, and all the white is what we put into it. And what we're trying to do here is try to qualify what is a qualified person. So when you read the law itself, it says that the applicant must be professional and have experience and qualifications in emergency medical services. We put related to medical emergency. We added the word related there. So they got to have some kind of background in the business or a corporation. So you know, if I'm a big corporation and I'm opening, we're not expecting the CEO to have all of this, but the corporation itself is going to have the following: that the management staff has read and understands the Texas EMS laws. It just makes sense that they kind of should know the laws and the rules of the land here. They have knowledge and experience in recruitment and retention, big issue that we deal with every day. That they have knowledge and experience in the policies of dispatching. That they have knowledge and experience in the policies on budgeting and financing, that they have a budget plan. They have experience in policies in medical control and in quality improvement. You might wonder where they came from, those ideals. That came right from a book put out by Jay Fitch, saying, you know, what the components that you need to understand and run a good organization. So we pulled them out here. Now, I believe as we move forward and open up 15711 with all the other stuff, we'll probably fine-tune some of this. But this gets us in the door here, and this is a check the box. Show me a CV, show me something that says that you have experience in your team or if you're an individual in yourself to budget. Do you understand what medical control means? Do you understand what BLS means? You know, those basic things that you need to know if you're getting into this business. And anyone who's starting a business probably should know that. I mean, if they don't know these basic things here, you got to wonder why they're getting into EMS in the beginning. And again, I really want to make it clear, as a bigger corporation, we don't expect the CEO or the president to know all of this, as long as they have those components within their company. And the threshold is not that hard. It's a checkbox and show us the evidence that you have this knowledge and experience. And then I really do believe, as we move forward 157, working with you, with this committee, and with the stakeholders around the state, we'll fine tune that even more as we go down the road here. But I can't commend Texas enough. I mean, first in the nation to do something like this. This is a big deal. This is a really big deal, and it kind of cleans up our industry a little bit. Would you like me to stop there and see if there's any questions on that, sir?
Sure. Anybody?
Okay.
I think it's hard to believe that up until now there hadn't been a requirement to actually read and know the laws that affect EMS.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find that any place in the nation.
Great.
I mean, and we wonder why we're not there yet as a true profession. So this will help move us in that direction.
Okay. We're going to do public at the end. Can you jot that down, Sean? I want to get all the way through and then go back, because that way people who have this in their hands and are reading it, that way they get a chance to ask all their stuff and they're not popcorning up and down.
Joe, are you thinking of the possibility of a test at some point?
We're not. Okay, not right now. We're not. We haven't had that discussion, Gene. I don't think you're thinking that. No. I mean, maybe
TSA just doesn't do tests.
I know.
If down the road that's a recommendation,
A litmus test. How's that?
A litmus test. Yeah, there we go. But as we go down the road, as 157 reopens and we look at this and we want to fine tune this, who knows? Who knows where we can go? I mean, that's up to us all to come up with that plan. This is just to get something on paper to start saying to people, this is what we're expecting here in Texas.
Well, that also ties in, there's been concern by stakeholders if there's an administrator of record course, is that I've been an administrator of record for 30 years. You know, I could teach the course. Why do I have to go sit in? And so these type of things, as they get fine-tuned, could be what is used to experience versus time in the course type of thing, to assist those things. So that, if you show you've been doing this for 30 years, then yeah, you may come teach the course, and to help some of those concerns that the stakeholders had. So,
and we all need to keep in mind, we're cutting the road here.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nobody that's done this before. On the side note, I'll say, as I give testimony to you guys here today, up in Pennsylvania, they're giving testimony on rules that I started back in 2009. And we start at the same time today. They're at 10 o'clock, we're at 9 o'clock. So it was really, hopefully they'll go through. But
Pennsylvania is a lot like Texas.
It's a long process, brother. Long process. So the next part
is amazing.
The next part, and the yellow is right from the legislation, is the letter of credit from a bank that is a federally insured bank or saving institute. And what this is trying to say, I believe, and from reading and talking to people, is we want to make sure they have the financial wares about them to open up a business and keep it going for the first 10 years. And this is a letter of credit. This is not a security bond. We can't go steal this money. We can't take it away from them. We can't do anything. What it is showing that you have a business plan in place that you can get credit, that you have some resources. And I don't believe $100,000 for the first startup is way out of line. I mean, if you buy a truck or two, you definitely have $100,000 worth of resources sitting there already. But so this is a little bit confusing from the standpoint that it's the first 4 years and all that. So the easiest way to explain it is, if you're a startup or you're already in business, and again, the government entities are exempt from this, it's $100,000 for the first 4 years, and then it's $75,000 for the next 2 years, $50,000 for the next 2 years, $25,000 for the next 2 years. At the end of 10 years, nothing. And it is just a letter of credit from a bank saying that the Joe Schmied or Ambulance can get $100,000 worth of credit, and you just got to show us evidence of that.
So if you're
One question along those lines. I think the failure there is that it doesn't show how much debt that service is already in. Audited financial statements would accomplish a loftier goal.
And I agree with you 100%, but we don't have it in the law to allow us to do
Right.
that. But you know, that's something we may want to tweak when we get into 15711. Our goal has always been to try to get this done so that we're ready for next September with the moratorium. And I probably should have said that right from the beginning. You know, the moratorium starting on September 1st of all new license, and we're going to try to process what we have right now. But the moratorium is starting, and we would be breaking the law if we did something other than that, unless it's an emergency service coming in, a 911 service, something like that.
So if you're a brand new service and you're starting off in debt of $1 million, you're going to have an additional line of credit available
Of 100,000.
of 100,000.
Yep.
So you're going to so if you've got your credit stretched to the max just to get the equipment and the facilities that you need to start a service, and I can't get that letter of credit, then I'm done.
Yes.
Hey, Joe,
Sir.
we're just having a sidebar, but does this, it says applicant of EMS, so does this affect air medical as well?
I would say yes, because they're getting an EMS license. Am I correct in saying? Yep.
Just curious.
It's across the board. If they're getting a license from us, they'll have to produce this.
Right.
And I understand on the startup on that whole thing, but you know, this is the law, so we're going to have to deal with it. And
So if I had a loan, but if I had a line of credit for $1 million and I was buying all this stuff up and I had $90,000 left on my line of credit to buy the equipment, would that be taken into consideration, or would I have to go out and find $10,000 more credit? And then if before that year ended, that line of credit dropped below $100,000.
So understand is that when they make application, they'll need to present a letter that says from a bank or an institute saying that they have $100,000 available credit.
And they have to maintain that for that first
It doesn't
year?
talk about maintaining. It just says
At that time that I submit that letter?
at that
So it
time
could
of
be only
submitting that
for 5
letter.
minutes.
A year later, they've got to do it.
Yeah, 2 years later, you gotta have it again.
And yeah, 2 years later, every time we would do an inspection, you would have to, if for some reason we had to go back in and do an inspection or something, and we were looking at the application, then you would have to present a letter showing that you have that credit, because that's a requirement to be in business in Texas. So I wouldn't want to sit here and say, oh yeah, you only have to show it on that day, and the next day you can just go spend that money, because the law says that you have to have $100,000 worth of credit. And then it's really up to them on how they conduct their business.
So the first year you have to maintain $100,000
For the first 4 years.
Well, it changes.
Well, the first 4 years is 100,000.
Right.
The next 2 years it's 75. The next 2 years it's 50. The final 2 years it's 25. And then after 10 years you don't have to have it. Okay. Next yellow, startup. Again, we're talking about government agencies are exempt from that. The next big one is, could you bring it down a little bit more?
Too far?
The $50,000 security bond from HHSC, if you're going to be a Medicaid provider, understand that that is run by another agency other than us, but it's a $50,000 security bond that you must maintain throughout, and every time you renew with them, and we got to work out that agreement between them and us on making sure that's all current, and we've been rushing to get this done, so we have time, but we have to clean up our application on the backside to get all these checks boxes and how we're going to do that. But we're working on that. So it's a $50,000 security bond from a bank, and that is a security bond. That is a lien against your business, and they're going to require. There's an application. If you go to their website, you can download the application and some of the instructions on that. Wow. Again,
You need to go down?
just stay right there for now. Any questions on the security bond from your group?
So I was talking to Jane this morning.
Okay.
And HHSC has put some stuff out, and Lucille may want to speak to this because she sent it to me, but from what I understand, they've always had the option to require a bond for people who are going to bill Medicaid. And now they're just basically going to enforce it on ambulance providers. But their language is different. And the concern is that, because their language says beginning September 1, 2013, anybody who is enrolled or re-enrolls, or who's going to enroll or re-enroll, has to have the $50,000 surety bond. But I'm not aware of what their re-enrollment period is, unless, I believe somebody told me they think it may be 5 years that they're going to move to, because Medicare's starting to create re-enrollment every so often and all that. So there may be a chance where they relicense as an EMS provider before they re-enroll with Medicaid, and so they've not hit the requirement with HHSC to have that bond. And even though the bond has nothing to do with DSHS, the reapplication process may require them to get that bond before they re-enroll with Medicaid. And where HHSC, the Department of Having Jurisdiction, is going to require them to get that bond. And so I don't know if there's a way to clean this language up where it falls in line with HHSC, or maybe as required by HHSC instead of the law language, because it appears from what HHSC is sending out to providers is that if I don't have to re-enroll for Medicaid until 2018, then that's when I have to show my $50,000 surety bond. I don't have to show it on September 1, 2013. They're not going to get an email. They're not going to get a mail of all these bonds in on it. They're going to get it when I re-enroll. But you may require me to have it before the agency who I have to have it for requires me to have it. So I think there needs to be some interagency work there to try to clean that up so it's consistent.
And we are meeting with them sometime soon, I can tell you that. We've already had a couple meetings with them. You've seen the latest thing that we have.
Yeah.
So I would agree, we'll go back. That's a good point. What happens on September 1st? Do you have to have it September 1st or just when you renew? And so I agree with your point. I agree with the question. So we need to go back and do a little bit more research on that.
Okay, and I'm sure that'll come up. The other thing in their language that I think we need to work out is that their language about who that applies to and doesn't apply to, again, is different than the law language. And so their language is ambulance providers who are not sponsored by or associated with another governmental entity are exempt, as opposed to directly operated by a governmental entity.
Sure.
So it's looser. And I think we need to get some clarification on that as well to again make sure that the DSHS rule that we're trying to follow the law is not going to require something more stringent than the agency we have to provide that bond for, if that makes sense.
It makes good sense. So I wrote down those 2 points. We'll be meeting with them and try to clean that up and at least get it to you. So make sure we're not making more questions than answers. Okay. The next part of this. Oh, any other questions on the security bond?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I said this at the beginning. I'd like to wait to the end because as we go through each section, you may have different. So just jot your stuff down, and then we'll come up and you can answer all the questions on all the sections. We'll address them all, and that way we're not one here, one there, and we get to talking about something and you jump forward to your next question out of the section we're talking on. So my apologies for that, but if you can, just jot those down and hold on to them.
Okay, and I believe the final part is the letters of approval from government. So just go down, bring that whole page up. So for a new service starting up, they're going to have to get a letter from the local governing body, municipality, or the county stating approval that they can kind of start this. In my language, not the law's language, like a certificate of need, that there's a need for this additional service, that it's not going to have a negative impact on the services that are already there, that it's not going to saturate the area with services, and as a new startup, you can't open up another station for 2 years unless you're expanding to provide 911 coverage. And I think it really is, again, like I said, my language, not the law's language, kind of a certificate of need. Built into here, and that's what this language is, and this is literally language right from the law itself, and it's requiring the municipality to look and say, hey, is there a need first of all. Is there another way of correcting that need if there is a need? Have we met with all the people? And I think this is actually good, that it forces a municipality to bring in emergency services, bring in EMS and say, okay, we don't like our response time. It's taking too long. What are we doing together to try to improve it? And one of the solutions could be to add a new service. But it'll force that language back and forth. It's got to, and I'm sure it's going to be under the open records, public meetings, those kind of events, and it'll force dialogue in communities, which I think is really, and it'll benefit EMS. There's no doubt about it. I believe. Is there anything else after that?
So is this going to force every municipality or every certain government entity that has a district, even ESD districts, to an example? I have an ambulance service. I'm in the Houston area, and I've got my letter of approval from the Houston City Council or whoever, and I want to start sending some of my ambulances, not a station. I'm just going to start sending them to another small city that's next to Houston. So do they have to get a letter from that city also?
It's in the first 2 years.
So
to work to pick up.
So
patients?
when you start your business
Right.
in Houston, so you'll get something from Houston saying you can open up a shop there, and if I'm correct, you have to have a permission in Houston already to open up from the city. So then if you're going there doing business and coming back to Houston, I don't think, and Jane, correct me if you think I'm wrong, I don't believe you need to have an approval from that community.
I think my question is that do you have to have a letter from every municipality or every county that you might potentially do some business in to be able to do business in that city or county?
I believe it's been our reading, our understanding, it is just from where you're licensed, wherever you're opening up your shop.
So if I open my shop up in Brazoria County, which I know you probably,
Is that in Texas?
Brazoria County, and I have 100 ambulances, and every morning they caravan all the way to Houston. Brazoria said, yeah, we can use an ambulance service, but we're actually not going to be there. We're going to caravan them into Houston, and we're going to get around to Houston saying no to us.
So I think in paragraph 7 up there, Joe, I think that's what we need to get legal to provide a read on, because to me it's very clear that what Brian's saying can't happen.
Right.
In the first 2 years.
In the
So
first
your first license period. So
but it's saying you can't open another station, right?
Well, it
or
says
expanding your service.
in municipality or county, other than the municipality or county from which the provider obtained the letter of approval under this subsection. So it says you can't, is prohibited from expanding operations to or stationing any emergency medical services vehicle in the municipality or county. So the question would be, is expanding operations to mean, because honestly, I think one of the reasons the numbers are going down in Houston is because they're skyrocketing in Brazoria and Fort Bend County.
Sure.
There's 90 some odd ambulance providers in Fort Bend County right now. And Chief, I don't think you have the business for 90 providers in Fort Bend County. And so they're already doing it. And I think the reason this was crafted that way was that if they're going to license in Fort Bend County for the first 2 years, that should be the only place you see them toting people, is in Fort Bend County. And if they show up in Houston and Brian sees them in his city, he calls you guys and you guys can come out. He shows you the picture on his phone and you guys can come out. Yeah, we went over there and picked up that patient. You're not supposed to for your first 2 years, and you can ding them to prevent I'm licensed in Guadalupe County,
Right.
but all my trucks are in Houston.
And we'll go back to legal and get that opinion. Point well taken. I don't think when we were drafting this, we were even thinking that, and it makes good sense. I don't know why we didn't think about it, because when you think about, yeah, I could just open a station and just send everybody out and then come home at night, like let the birds fly.
Another loophole we might see is that they could come into a very small city within, for example, Harris County, maybe a city of 5,000 people, Sweet Talk City Council, make a nice glitzy presentation to them, take them out to dinner or whatever. Okay, yes, you can have an EMS service in Podunk City, and we'll serve as your backup for 911, make it sound really nice. But then where would their boundaries be? Podunk City might not have a nursing home, might not have anything for them to pick up from, but they would be reaching out because they're not going to look at those municipal boundaries. They probably
Sure.
don't even know what those municipal boundaries are. it would be nice if this was, and I know I'm a dreamer here today, I understand that. But it would be nice if it was for cities of larger scale that would have to get permission, or if they were going to operate outside those cities, the permission would come from the county level.
Yeah, I think that we need to see what legal says.
Yep, we'll get some clarification on
A lot of that
applicant.
language.
Exactly.
Was to
And
keep
it-
them bound by where they got the letter from when they were a new startup.
And that's what's good about this dialogue is that, you know, we got to keep thinking about what's the loophole. Someone's going to come up with a loophole around this, and we got to close that from the beginning. So we'll take that back to legal and get that opinion.
Hey Dudley,
Yeah.
doesn't it state in the rule that they have to define their geographical boundary in the EMS provider license
yeah.
back?
That's another piece.
So,
Yep.
wouldn't that
You have to
take
define where you're
effect?
going to be.
I mean, that would be something that would
This
be
just
looked
adds
at.
teeth that says you have to stay in that area your first 2 years.
You're bound by what they say.
And you say, and I don't know the answer to this, but I've seen this in the past, I'm covering the whole state of Texas.
Yeah.
You know, so we're going to have to look at that, and we'll get an opinion from legal. We hear your questions, and it's a good question.
All right. Anything else for Joe on this?
I don't think there's anything else in this.
All right, I'm going to open up the mic for the floor, Joe. So when you come up, and like I said when we began, we are being broadcast across the world. So make sure that mic is really not that sensitive. So get right up on that mic. Tell us who you are and who you're here representing, and then whatever your question, comment, concern, or problem is. And Tammy's taking notes, so if you got a question, comment, anybody, come on. There's got to be something on this. Come on. This is one of the biggest changes to our industry in years. It should be on. I don't think they gave us switches anymore.
Chris Collier with SetTrack. When this law first came out, we had some counties approach DRAC and asked, when a county does give a letter of approval for that EMS provider, they don't want to just give a letter of approval. It does give that county authority somehow to start inspecting and enforcing EMS rules that when historically in the past they haven't.
I don't believe that gives the authority. I mean, obviously we'll have to talk to legal, but I would think they would have to pass some kind of a local law to give them the authority. Right now, the authority lies with us to do the inspections.
Yeah, so with the counties, they can't pass ordinances. They have to follow what legislatures are. And then they've expressed concern that the county commissioners court don't just want to do a letter of approval. They want to have a process to where they feel comfortable giving that letter of approval.
So this is one of those examples of why it's important to really pay close attention in the legislative session, because this language was in another bill that was put out there by some folks as an effort to help reduce fraud. And that bill really wasn't going anywhere, but he worked some dealings in the last minute as it was being voted out of one house of the legislature and got this language input. And the Texas Association of Counties and the Texas Municipal League did not realize that happened. And so they are in try to recover mode. I think they're pretty happy we have the moratorium because it gives them a year to figure out what the counties can and can't do under this, but they're trying to figure out their own legal abilities. What does this give them? And then any liability they have either for giving the letter or not giving the letter as well. So the TAC and TML and the Rural County Association, they're all over this as well. I've talked, a couple of them have called me just because I know the guys that work for them, and they have a lot of questions. And so they're going to try to get kind of a stakeholder meeting of counties and cities together. I think they're going to invite you guys to that, and probably some EMS representatives to that, to try to figure out, okay, not only what powers does this give us or not give us, but then how do we give guidance to our counties or cities? How do they form that letter? What does it need to say? What does it not need to say? How do I check off these boxes that this says that the county has to attest to? Because that's a lot of stuff they're not big on, and really this just sneaked by them. Because this is something in the past that has been tried to get them the authority to do that, and a lot of counties don't want that authority for a whole host of reasons. So,
and I've had the same discussion with a couple of counties.
Yeah.
And we have a year they have a year to figure it out. They have to produce a letter to us how they do it. I think, and I've heard the whole gamut of how they're going to do it.
all right.
Good morning, Chris Alexander, San Marcos, Hayes County EMS. Question on the Medicaid surety bond. Does that also have the 8-year exemption written into it?
No.
because what it's doing is catching us as a 30-year ambulance service with a history with Medicaid and requiring us to pay the surety bond, where HSS has, knowledge of how we work and we've never committed any Medicaid fraud, never been convicted of anything, which was their original language. Is if they have, indication that we're screwing up, then they require the bond. It's catching us and requiring us to pay the same thing as a brand new provider, still wet behind the ears. And frankly, that's unfair because we've got the history, they know us, there's no evidence of any wrongdoing, and we need that exemption with that rule as well.
And I don't know how, we don't have the authority to give you the exception to this law because it's not in the law that way. So, and I know you understand this, but there's the law, then there's the rules. You get a little wiggle room in the rules, but you don't get any wiggle room in the law. And the law says what it says. So I don't, we'll be meeting with them and we'll bring that concern up with them, but I don't know that they even have the authority to grant any kind of exemption.
Chris, aren't you government authority?
We're nonprofit.
501c3 contracted with the government.
That's the.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you know what have you researched the cost of it?
I have a quote.
It's like $5 for every $100 or for every $1,000.
Yeah.
So you're looking at about $250 a year.
Right, which, becomes a hassle, essentially. I mean, for us, as a nonprofit with several $1 million budget, that's not bad. If we're a nonprofit volunteer service, that's been in operation for 30 years, that's gonna be a pain for them.
And Chris, that's part of that wording, and I figured GK Sprick will come up to the mic and talk about it a little bit because the Texas Ambulance Association is working with HHSC to try to get a better definition of what that wording is, but they're using entirely different wording than what's in the law and different wording than what's in this rule, which is Joe and them are going to go back and work to try to get some equality there, because I don't think the provider license rule should require more of us on something that DSHS isn't required to have. They're enforcing. They're saying we got to check this box. Do you have it? And so they've got to get that piece worked out. And that language to me, I want to interpret it that way. And I'm not an Aggie lawyer, although I can become one now. But I'm not an Aggie lawyer. But that language, the way HHSC has it stated, sounds like that you guys may not have to have one because of your association with the governmental entities. But we don't know that right now. I mean, it's kind of up in the air.
Yeah, and I just don't want to be on the receiving end of one of those letters saying, by the way, you're up for your reapplication, you have to have your surety bond, or go through our reapplication with dishes and, we need to check that box.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm not up for reapplication for Medicaid for another 5 years. I don't need to go through that expense, go through that headache until we need to have it. So some clarification there would be much appreciated.
No problem.
Hi, I'm Jack Sosby, current president of the Texas Association of Air Medical Services, and also with Cook Children's in Fort Worth. And I think we have to be careful when we start talking about having the letter to approve you to go into the municipality. It may be appropriate to be within your response area, but if you have a fixed-wing aircraft, which we do, that fixed wing can go to any county in the state of Texas. So if you're going to say, I'm going to be approved in Tarrant County, there's no way I can go get a letter from every county in the state of Texas to say, we should be approved to be able to have a license.
And the rule and the law gives an exemption to mutual aid or disaster response. So you're right, you don't need a license to go everywhere, but if you're going as a disaster response, mutual aid, then you're exempt from that part.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you call it mutual aid, it's not really a definition, because we're going to another hospital to pick up a patient.
They're going to Abilene to pick up a kid and bring him back to Cook Children's on the fixed wing. Now, the other piece of it is it's only your initial first 2-year license period.
Right. So me, I'm
it actually kind of insulates you potentially from
it does, but
that C word.
On the tame side, if there's somebody that's starting up a fixed wing service in Big Bend or somewhere, that's going to be an issue for them to have to go get letters from all the places they could go. So I just wanted to.
That's a good point, especially in the air, because you can go a whole lot farther than you would on the ground.
Right. Okay.
But Jack, let me ask you a question. Wouldn't that be, inter-facility would be different than responding for 911 service?
No, it covers all responses.
Yeah.
That's where the rub is.
And I think that's been an issue nationally in EMS. We've always tried to put the non-emergency interfacility EMS system into what I'm going to call the emergency EMS system, where there probably should have been language years ago where we separate the two. But it is what it is.
And then once again, when you go into that place to get a license, we base it in Meacham. Tarrant County really doesn't care if we're there or not. We're not flying fixed wing within that same county. So if you went to the 4 city commissioners and said, hey, we need a license for fixed wing, they're not really going to care because you're not serving that place.
Right.
So.
Alicia Wyron, I'm a flight paramedic. I also serve on the Air Medical Committee. Couple questions. Little concerned about, who gets to approve, just because, I'd like to see some EMS involvement, somebody who understands the industry helping to make that decision instead of, like you said, the small municipality, they come in, they court them, they say it's really needed, and there's no involvement from anyone else, either at the RAC level or involvement in EMS. You're asking for EMS providers to provide an administrator of record who understands things, and then you're asking for people who don't necessarily understand the industry to approve it. So just kind of a concern or a disconnect there.
On the county and city piece.
On the county and city piece, right. A little bit of a disconnect there.
And just so you know, that literally is the law. And it is what it is, to be perfectly honest with you. And I would suspect that as we get closer and we work with the counties and the municipal groups, that maybe they'll put together some kind of a document that says, here's what you should at least consider best practices. Bring in your ambulance people, bring in the police, fire, whoever, to at least help make those decisions.
Right. Another kind of question for clarification is air medical providers, a lot of the companies the larger companies anyways, are self-insured. They have a certain amount of money set aside. It's well over what you're requiring. Would that be allowed as also for the line of credit, or would they have to go out and get the additional line of credit that says State of Texas line of credit? Here you go.
And we'll need to address that with legal, but the law says it has to come from a bank or a savings institute federally insured.
They could have millions of dollars sitting in a bank account earmarked for whatever.
So one of the,
they can.
I was asked the same question yesterday. Could we designate, put that money aside, or whatever? I don't know the answer to that because the law is pretty clear that it has to come from a bank or a federally insured institute.
Okay.
Well, Alicia, this is also, the $100,000 is for the initial.
Right.
And for the first renewal. Okay.
And then it tiers down. Right. And even larger EMS agencies may have certain, monies put aside so that they don't buy insurance all the time. They have things that earmarked, private services, things like that. And then the whole piece on where air medical serves the regions. Fixed wing obviously has a much broader, band. And, I can foresee, going into an area and X, Y, and Z won't let you fly into their area. The county commissioners were, and this area will. And then I'm really curious what you think about the federal preemption on providing a certificate of medical necessity. We've gotten some legal stuff, and that really is what it is. It's a certificate of medical necessity. And we've talked ad nauseum about the federal preemption. Where's your view on that?
So, we've talked a little bit about that too, but, this legislation, my read of it is this is trying to correct a ground problem, and air is a little bit different. So we need to have that discussion, and we've heard a lot more of that today. We need to have that discussion more with legal to get their opinion on what they think.
Okay.
Because I do understand.
It's written, as of September 1st, it does apply to us.
Sure. Yes, as it's written right now.
Whether we're getting definitions out there or whatever else, it does apply to us.
Fully agree.
A certificate of medical necessity is required as of September 1st. Interesting. Okay.
Sean Salter with San Antonio Air Life and Air Methods. One of the comments that I have, I don't expect any action from this board because I know how the law is written, but I'm not certain that government entities should have been excluded.
Amen, brother.
I just gathered through just looked through the Texas EMS magazine, and of the 93 disciplinary actions that exist in the back of the book, more than 10 of them were from government entities. And so I'm not certain if we have the ability to take that into consideration during the interpretation phase. It seemed as though Texas Medicaid made an interpretation completely different than the law with what they posted on their website. But I think it is something that we as an EMS community should look at for the future to include that. And I say that for several different reasons, not just because of the disciplinary actions that exist, but one of the common practices in fire-based systems is, of course, promotion due to rank. That doesn't necessarily mean that a fire chief who's responsible for the oversight of EMS provision in their particular area has history or experience in EMS rule. So I just would like to make that comment.
Thanks, Sean. And for those that aren't aware or weren't following this through the legislative session, there was a concerted effort to try to get this to apply to all EMS providers. And the legislators, for whatever reason, felt that right now the governmental entities should be exempt. So, and the way that was written, unfortunately, it didn't exempt some folks who probably, for the same reasons they want to exempt governmental entities, probably should have been in that exemption, the 501c3s and stuff. The guys who put the language together for the letters from the county and all that, they exempted all the folks that shouldn't apply to, the ESDs, the hospital districts, all that stuff, whereas the other pieces that were in the original bill didn't exempt those folks. But there was a concerted effort. It was a horribly bloody fight. And I don't drink, but I might if anybody wants to hear that story. So, but it as one governmental provider, I'll tell you, I 100% agree with you. I think it should apply to everybody in the business, because our problem is a lack of sophistication and leadership in this business. That's what gets us all into trouble. And anything we can do to improve the lot of every provider, I think, should be done. But that's just my own personal editorial. It does not represent the position of myself or my employer or my family or him, anybody. So, anybody else? Okay, come on, ground folks. Really? We had like 8 air medical providers and 1 ground person. Come on. I don't even think we've had a ground provider yet, have we? Oh yeah, we did. We had Chris. We had San Marcos, Hayes County. All right, good. At least we had 1. Anybody? Come on. This is huge. Yeah. They're all waiting for the other shoe to drop.
The cameras are off.
They don't want to be on the internet. They don't want to be the next YouTube sensation, I guess.
They're not supposed to be here.
All right. So as a committee, do we want to summarize the things that we've asked Joe to look at, so that we can take that to GTAC out of this? Tammy, did you get good notes on those things? Would you kind of, I know let me just scroll up, I'll just walk through it real quick. So, so the first piece was the administrator of record. Did we have anything in that section?
Are you going all the way back to when you first started?
Yep. I'm going to have you scroll up there.
Okay. Just the question on what directly operated by government entity means.
Okay. So we need input back from the department about what directly operated by a governmental entity is. Okay.
You can tie that to the same question with the HHSC and the DSHS, the different definitions.
Yeah, but I want to break that out separate. So what is directly operated? The next section that we went over, the experience piece, did we have any issues there? Okay. Copy of the letter of credit, did we have any on the letter of credit itself? And there were some from the audience on that as well.
The main issue was just what you said Lucille had brought up over, the concern about needing to clean up the language.
Okay, on the surety bond, but
Right.
nothing above that on the letter of credit?
No, just on the surety bond requiring it more than what HHSC requires. Those were really the two main issues.
So clarification of HHSC's language versus DSHS's language on the surety bond, and directly operated by a governmental entity, what does that entail or not entail? How is that going to be interpreted?
And one of the big things in the Medicaid surety bond language is that surety bond cannot be purchased or whatever 12 months before re-enrollment. And so if you need it for DSHS 12 months before their Medicaid re-enrollment would be, it wouldn't be any good. So
See, if you already
It
have
has
a
to be
surety bond,
continuous.
because
It has
you
to
do
be
your own billing.
continuous.
So you do your own billing, and you already have a surety bond. Because of that, does that count?
Yeah, it's 50,000 or more.
Or I outsource my billing, and my billing company.
If the bond's payable to HHSC.
It has to be
Yeah,
payable
it
to
depends
them
who it's
directly.
payable to.
Yeah,
So it's-
you have to have a 50,000 bond payable to HHSC.
You have a, is it 50,000 or at least 50,000?
I have no idea. I'm
But is
I'm
it
throwing out.
to HHSC?
Well, you have to have a bond to bill Medicaid. Medicaid requires that. So if you're a billing service and I have 5 services I'm billing for, does my bond cover them?
No,
Yeah.
not with this language, it doesn't.
Yeah, they have to have their own, is my belief.
What page are you on, Dylan?
Because this is related to the provider, not the billing service.
Right.
Okay, so this is requirements on the provider,
So if I'm-
not the billing
So if
service.
I'm already billing Medicaid,
Mhm.
and I'm.
As the provider.
I'm in-house billing.
Uh-huh.
Then I already have my bond,
That
so
would work.
I'm okay. Potentially.
Potentially, yes. That's a
$50,000
conversation that you'd have to have with the Medicaid
Gotcha.
piece,
As
okay?
long as it meets their requirements for this. So we've got the surety bond question, we've got the directly operated by a governmental entity, and then the last one that just occurred to me was what the majority of our public comment was about, which was the effect of the letter from the county and city on upstart air medical programs. So those 3 things we'll take to GTAC, asking them to do that. Now, from the committee, are we okay with this language going forward with those 3 caveats to GTAC?
There was one
tomorrow?
more, the clarification on, the one I.
Being able to get a letter of approval in one city or county and go to another city or county without
Okay.
having a letter of approval there.
All right.
In Dudley, I would assume, I'm the new guy here, so I'm not sure on the process. If you put that in writing from the committee to us, outlining these questions so we don't miss something here, that would be really helpful. I took notes, Jane took notes, but I want to make sure we cover it all. And
Absolutely.
we agree on the overall question as you just stated.
Dudley.
Okay. Yes.
On page 3, on item U, it talks about providing documentation evidencing the following. What exactly are you looking for in documentation evidencing the following? I mean, you're asking for them to, management staff has read and understood the Texas Emergency Health Care Act and department's rules. I mean, what kind of documentation are you looking for that Kevin read 15711? I mean, is that just a statement saying,
Yes.
Did you read it?
Yep, it can be that simple. I mean, this isn't going to be a high hurdle to get over because this is our first try at this. So I think we'll concrete it a little bit better as we move forward, as we rewrite 15711. But right now, it's just a written document, a signed document saying, yep, I understand it. So then.
And that's going to come from the administrator of the organization?
It'll be from the applicant will
So
sign it,
you're
whoever owns the company saying, yep, I understand it.
Okay.
It's like you're from Texas right there.
I'm trying.
Brian, did you have a comment? Jump up there real quick.
So there's a few problems that
Name?
Ryan Matthews. Is this thing on? Check 1, 2. Ryan Matthews, Wichita Falls Transtar. We have a couple of problems that we tried to address during the legislative session that they said needed to be addressed in the rulemaking process. The bank letter of credit, when you start talking to bankers, there's 2 types. There's a bank letter of credit that is a snapshot. So in other words, I'm going to stack $100,000 on the table and I'm going to sit in front of them like, there it is, and you're going to send it into them and they're going to say it's okay. The problem is that you need an irrevocable letter of credit, and good luck getting a bank to do it over 2 years. because it's usually based on income, cash flow, and there's no way that you can have a prospectus cash flow for 2 years. So the bank letter of credit's going to be problematic. It's going to be the same problem as the bond for the Medicaid, because Medicaid is going to be on a different cycle requiring the bond. So you're also going to have a hard time buying a bond for 5 years. You're probably going to have to buy it annually. Well, our provider's licenses are biannual. So we're going to have to overcome that as well. And that's going to have to be specifically addressed in the rulemaking process, because if it's not, there's going to be a conflict in reality versus what is required. So the bank letter of guarantee is going to be a problem, and the bond language are going to have a similar problem. So I think that needs to be up front, some mechanism in there. And the bank $100,000 or $75,000 or whatever for 4 years, that's going to be hard for a bank to say, oh yeah, in the next 4 years, they're still going to be worth $100,000. So we definitely need to address
We'll add that to the clarification on the letter of credit. We'll add that to our recommendations to GTAC. So what I got for, and we're going to need a motion and a vote on this to take this to GTAC tomorrow, is approving this moving forward with DSHS providing clarification and cleaning up the language on directly operated by a governmental entity, the surety bond language cleaned up with HHSC's language, the effect of the county city letter on upstart air medical programs, the clarification on the county city letter on people getting licensed in one city and running calls in another city or county, and then clarification or example of the letter of credit and exactly what that's going to be required to look like, smell like, and feel like, right? Does anybody want to make a motion about that? Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, Victor, come up to the mic. The other thing we have to do. Yeah, and Justin made it. On your way up, Victor, and we've got just a short amount of time. The next item on our agenda, and then Victor, I'll let you go, is taking. Let me find the correct reading so I don't get in trouble with anybody. Recommendations to DSHS as required by Senate Bill 8 of the 83rd Texas Legislative Session regarding the laws and policies related to licensure of non-emergency EMS transportation providers that would reduce the incidents and opportunities of fraud, waste, and abuse. This was put out by the GTAC chair for a lot of committees to look at. He also sent out the language from the Medical Transportation Task Force that met in 2000, or put some recommendations in 2004. And he has charged the EMS committee to kind of take the lead on this. And we have a lot of work to do between now and November, because we have to have the recommendations to GTAC and approved by GTAC in November so that Jane can get the report written and it goes up to the legislature by January 1st. We originally thought we were going to be doing both of these in parallel so we'd have some time, but today's really our only stab at 157.11, so we spent the majority of our time on that. We have, as a committee, slated 4 additional meeting dates, and we may potentially have a 5th back here in Austin before the conference in November. Those dates are, and locations, and these will go out formally through the public notification process. The agenda will go out to Jane. She'll get that email later today, and that process will start. But on September 27th, we're going to meet in Houston at Harris County ESD number 1. To do the Senate Bill 8 stuff, to basically have a stakeholder meeting and say what other ideas are there out there, what do we need to do to continue to improve what these bills started on. October 11th, the EMS committee will be in Harlingen conducting a stakeholder meeting. On October 18th, we will be in Amarillo at the Laura Bush Institute, and on November 1st, we'll be in Dallas. Depending on how those meetings go, our plan is to do those 4 and potentially do a 5th one as a wrap-up here in Austin in between November 1st and the conference. So those will all go out through the normal change. You'll see those. Those meetings are going to be dedicated. They're going to be from 10 until 3, or most of them, I think one starts at noon, but they're going to be 3 to 5 hours of nothing but going through any ideas people have to help further reduce fraud in the state of Texas. Joe's going to try to be at a majority of those. The majority of the committee should be there. And so if we're coming to your area, please get your services out there to participate in that, because that's another charge that DSHS was given, and we're going to take the ball and run with it and get that back to GTAC by November. Any question for anybody on that? And the last thing is Victor to talk about EMTF real quick and the number of ambulance MOAs. And she's going to shut that up real quick. And you've got like a minute and a half before we get kicked out of here by the air medical providers.
All right. Victor Wells, I'm the EMTF Program Manager for Texas. Thank you for having me in. The MOA on the screen that you see on the left should have that logo in the middle. That's the new Texas EMTF MOA. It's standardized across the state. Each of the EMTF regions are working on that. So if you don't have one in play, please do so. If you think you still have a DISH's MOA, it expired last December. So you do not have an MOA in place. We've been working on those, working really hard. What you can see right now, we have about 292 MOAs that are in place right now. About 50 of those are with hospitals, so the remainder are EMS and a few other incidentals. So you can see across there the different regions, like 50 in EMTF 1 and 33 in EMTF 2. So the number there is 240 MOAs that are in place. But if you don't have one in place, please get with your EMTF coordinator. Feel free to contact us, and we'll help point you to the right person.
Since we've done that at a regional level, is that more or less or the same as what the state had signed previously?
We actually, I believe we have now just recently exceeded what was in place already with the state before. The original numbers was 282. We've got 53, which were an intermediary document, which is the same but different. And then we've got 304 of the new one total. And so I think we've exceeded where we were originally.
If you know of agencies that aren't signed up, please encourage them to. I was talking to somebody the other day. It's been 5 years since we've had a large mobilization for hurricanes. 5 years. That's a long time. And the last thing we want when we need to mobilize resources, the EMTF process is working really, really well and it's starting to become very smooth. But you trying to get a city attorney or a corporate attorney to approve an MOA at the last minute and get it signed, because you have to have it signed before you can be deployed. And we all want to go on game day. Get that thing knocked out ahead of time. Nothing changed from DSHS language. It's still your choice to go or not go. But don't be fooled when Victor says we're about the same or maybe we're more than what the state had. We still don't have enough ambulances. So if we could have 800 MOAs signed, it would be a great day, because you all know your own shops. If we had 800 MOAs signed, hopefully we could put 250 ambulances on the road if we needed to. So
that's a great point, but we see right now we have about 35 teams. Our goal is 200 deployable trucks. Right now, out of all those MOAs, we feel pretty strong about 175 trucks out of all of those MOAs. So we do still need more MOAs. We need more people. We need more trucks.
All right. Thank you, Victor. And we are out of time. The air medical folks are hovering.
Literally.
And they want to start their meeting. Anything else for the good of the order from the committee? Anything else for the good of the order from the public? I'll let him do it. Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn. Motion. We're out of here. Thank y'all.